Our nation's founding documents limit excessive governmental power. They protect our individual and property rights. The Declaration declares our rights come from God. The first of these, the right to life. The Constitution ensures our gun rights, a right so important it's enshrined in our Second Amendment, grants power to we the people as expressed by voting, not by judicial decree. Protect our rights. Judge Jeff Hughes, the rock-solid conservative.
Oh, that's the way I like it.
Nothing's better than boiled seafood, spiced just right.
Oh, yeah.
And Louisiana Fish Fry Products makes it easy to boil right every time.
Can't get enough.
Grab a bag. There's nothing to mix. Just pour and boil.
Oh, now you're cooking.
Crawfish, crab, or shrimp. With Louisiana Fish Fry Products, you got boiling down easy.
Oh, that's the way I like it. Oh.
Welcome back to SOLA TV. Just last week, the summer-long statewide tournament at Anglers Rodeo, most of you guys know it as a Star, ended with its big banquet. And I know you see that. There's a lot of boats. There was even a truck rolled out of there this year, right?
Well, Joe, we've been covering this thing since its inception, and I got to tell you, this was the most exciting year I've ever watched.
Yes.
Particularly in that speckled trout category, but every category had a lot of heat on it. And unfortunately, the last weekend, the Labor Day weekend, we had a kind of a downer with the hurricane, but that was nothing to take away from it. What a great event it was.
You know, when you look at some of the weights, 0.02 of an ounce separated a guy rolling out with maybe an 18-foot Nordic Star bay boat, as opposed to, going home and saying, I finished second. It was a terrific event this year, and CCA Louisiana is to be complimented for their work, because you don't see that much excitement among a lot of fishermen until you get to that banquet. Most of all, you see the look in those kids' eyes who won the youth division. For the first time ever, there was a Mississippi division in the Louisiana tournament. I don't think we've ever reached our hands across that state boundary very often to embrace fishermen from Mississippi, but this year it happened. Very competitive division, too, in their speckled trout category. Little Abe Doxey, probably next to Isabel Schmidt, the two youth winners. I couldn't think of any kids. In fact, I offered to buy the boat from him, and he said, no way, no way. And his dad said, maybe we'll talk price, but he wasn't going to turn loose with that boat. So let's go to the CCA Star Banquet held at Live Oak Arabians last week, and let's find out about who won, who maybe shed a few tears, and let's talk to one very interesting character who was there. I promise you're going to see more of this guy in the future.
I caught my fish and out by the lake in Seabrook.
Oh, did you? How big was it?
14 foot.
Really? So he just made the 14-inch, right?
So mine's 15 foot. 15-foot trout.
Oh, he caught the trout. They gave him a 15-foot boat. Right? He was 15 inches. See that? A 15-inch fish gave him a 15-foot boat. That's pretty good trade, right? Where'd you catch your fish?
Calcasieu Point.
Really?
We're not at Calcasieu Point. At Calcasieu Point.
On what?
I think it was a glow in the dark shark.
Get out of here. Congratulations, Kyle.
Baton Rouge had good luck a long time ago. An underground aquifer of pure, fresh, clean drinking water formed under our area. Today, this aquifer supplies Baton Rouge's drinking water that has been called the best in our nation. Now this huge aquifer of pure drinking water is threatened by excessive pumping, aggressive saltwater intrusion, increasing chloride concentration. 80 million gallons a day pumped for public use, but an additional 80 million gallons a day pumped for industrial use at plants along the Mississippi River. And that's the problem.
We're working for a fair balance. River water for industry, drinking water for the people.
And there's only one man with the power to protect our drinking water. Commissioner of Conservation, Jim Welch.
Mr. Welch, our drinking water needs your attention.
Join us, call Jim Welch today, and tell him to start protecting Baton Rouge drinking water.
Welcome back to SOLA TV. One of the things Louisiana can be proud of is the Atchafalaya Delta.
Correct.
And Chris Macaluso, my son, is glad to have you aboard. But tell us about the Atchafalaya Delta in the wildlife management area, but most of all what it means to Louisiana.
Well, the Atchafalaya Delta and the Wax Lake Delta, which is just to the west of the Atchafalaya Delta, all part of the Atchafalaya Basin. And what's important about Atchafalaya Delta and Wax Lake Delta is that they are the only two places in North America that are building wetland right now. You know, you look at that in contrast to everything else in the Mississippi River Delta that's retreating and sinking and subsiding and, you know, eliminating a lot of our hunting and fishing opportunities and making our communities and our infrastructure more vulnerable. You go to Wax Lake and Atchafalaya Delta, it's a different story. They are building prime hunting and fishing habitat down there every time there's an opportunity for sediment to fall out of the Atchafalaya River.
The idea that it's the only building delta in North America has garnered a lot of, I guess, attention from hydrologists, from conservationists, from environmentalists, right?
Correct, and it draws that attention because it gives us an example of what can happen with the Mississippi River Delta if we give the Mississippi River the same opportunity that the Atchafalaya has at Wax Lake and at the Atchafalaya Delta. If we can build some diversions out into the Breton Basin, out into the Barataria Basin, even move some water into western parts of Terrebonne Parish coming out of the Atchafalaya Basin, water that's heavy with sediment, heavy with nutrients, you could start rebuilding wetlands very, very soon. You know, you look at a place like Wax Lake, it's built thousands of acres out into Atchafalaya Bay in the last 50 years. In geologic times, 50 years is nothing. You know, so if we would open up a diversion on the east and west side of the Mississippi River, or multiple diversions, like are called for in the state's Coastal Restoration Master Plan, you'd have an opportunity to build wetlands like we see at Wax Lake and like we see at the Atchafalaya Delta in the Mississippi River Basin. We just have to build those projects.
Well, you know, with all the doom and gloom in southeast Louisiana about coastal erosion and subsidence, this is really a good news to hear that the Atchafalaya is building. Are we taking that lesson learned from Atchafalaya and getting ready to apply it over there? And I would ask you, what's it going to take to do that, but I already know the answer. It's money. So the real question is, how do we get the money to do what's being done in Atchafalaya on the Mississippi?
Well, Don, as you know, the state released a Coastal Restoration Master Plan. It was approved by the legislature this year. There have been several federal studies that have shown that strategically placed sediment diversions along the Mississippi River can duplicate what we see at Wax Lake and what we see at Atchafalaya Delta. What our campaign, the Vanishing Paradise campaign, the Mississippi River Delta campaign, Louisiana Wildlife Federation, and lots of other nonprofit organizations are working for is to get as much money into this state as possible to go towards coastal restoration. And then once it gets here, to make sure that it gets spent on the right things. You know, we understand that there's importance behind levees and infrastructure and things like that, but we have to take the opportunities that we have with money coming from settlements from the oil spill, with money coming from oil and gas royalties. When that comes into our coastal restoration, funds, that money has to go out the door for coastal restoration work. It has to be coastal restoration, wetland restoration, barrier island restoration has to be treated with the same importance as levees and other infrastructure, because it is as important as that other infrastructure. Wax Lake tells us that we can do a lot of things with the Mississippi River. We just have to get the projects built.
One of the things I think when we look at Hurricane Isaac and all of the problems it created, can we see something like that helping on the east side of the river? I mean, can we see those diversions maybe slowing down some of that flood water? Because you look at every parish around the Maurepas area and around Pontchartrain, they all had water problems.
Well, the Maurepas Basin is a very interesting scenario. You know, we saw some things in flooding in the Pontchartrain Basin and throughout the Breton Basin during Isaac. I think that was unexpected because, you know, it was a Category 1 storm. They didn't expect the storm surges to be that great. But we have to realize that during that storm, you had storm surge coming into the Pontchartrain and Maurepas area for almost a week. Mm-hmm. And all of South Louisiana has become more vulnerable because of coastal land loss. You see land loss around the Pontchartrain Basin. You see it out in the Biloxi Marsh. You see it all around the Delacroix area. That means that our communities are going to continue to be more and more vulnerable. In the Maurepas Basin especially, you see a degradation of habitat there because you don't have good hydrology in that area. You don't have water from the Mississippi River being moved through the Maurepas Swamp. And so what you see there is increased subsidence. You see increased degradation of the swamp, which means that those communities that had been protected by that swamp, and that swamp that served as a sponge to soak up storm surge and to soak up wind and wave action, as that swamp falls apart, those communities become more vulnerable as well. So one of the projects we'd really like to see is reconnecting Blind River to the Mississippi River. So you can get improved hydrology there and you can get improved habitat.
Manchac too.
Yeah, the Manchac Swamp, all of that area would benefit greatly from some water, some improved hydrology going through that swamp. You get your submerged aquatic vegetation back. You break up some of those invasive species like the salvinia, which has taken over that swamp. You get good food for ducks. You get better fishing. You get a lot of good things when you let the Mississippi River behave as a delta again.
You know, one of the battles is fighting and reversing coastal erosion. Once we win that battle, the secondary battle is going to be who owns that land. Is it going to be private or is it going to be public? The good thing about the Atchafalaya is most of that down there that's being rebuilt belongs to you and me.
Absolutely. Wax Lake Delta, Atchafalaya Delta is public land. It's very heavily hunted because it's such great waterfowl habitat. You've got tremendous hunting opportunity when you go down to Wax Lake. One thing that the folks at Wildlife and Fisheries will tell you that it is so popular, you may want to think about not going out there opening weekend. If you're not one of those guys who's hunted it on a regular basis already, save opening weekend for the regulars, and then throughout the duck season, you can go there and hunt all day. And that's important in a place like that because you really have to hunt the tides.
Right,
it's not necessarily a matter of just having that first flight in the morning. You got to hunt tide. So, but be careful down there. It's big, it's expansive, you can get stuck.
A lot
Surface
of shallow
drives.
water.
Right.
Yeah, surface drives are very good. I know you have one.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
it can be used down there. One of the things is there's a mooring spot down in the Atchafalaya Delta Wildlife Management Area. Camping. You know,
Right.
You have camping opportunity there. Another thing, just to tell you about that area, it might be good if you're going down there for the first time, find somebody who's been there before.
Sure.
Buddy up with them. You've been down there several times. How many ducks are we going to see down there this year?
Thousands. Thousands. There's really nothing in the Midwest to stop those birds from coming down. The habitat down there is great. There's lots of submerged vegetation. There's lots of great ponds. You ask anybody, when they go down there and it's right, you're not going to see ducks in that number pretty much anywhere else in the state. That is an area that attracts thousands and thousands of ducks and geese. It's just a wonderful resource. It is sportsman's paradise.
Best
When you
source
think
of
about,
information for somebody wanting to go down there. Wildlife and Fisheries website, get all the regulations, because there are special regulations on WMAs that don't apply on private land.
Right. Go to Wildlife and Fisheries. You can get all the information there. Open and weekend, they shut off hunting at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but the rest of the season, you can hunt pretty much all day. And the best thing is to call the local branch of the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries down there and get that information.
Well, there's an LAA, limited access area there, that restricts all outboard motor boats, you know, I guess. So you can't
anything
really
powered, any vessel powered, you can't bring it in there.
Right.
You strictly walk in or paddle in.
Paddle
That area,
in.
it ain't a whole lot of walking, I wouldn't think.
No.
Well, you can walk. I mean, there are sandbars out there that you can walk on. There are flats where you can go hunt, but you do need a pirogue or a kayak or something that's going to let you get into those little cuts and get back into the ponds.
Well, that's good because the last time I went up there, I think I went up to right here in mud. So
And bring the fishing pole too, right?
Yeah.
Cast and blast.
Fishing is great down there. Bass fishing, redfish, speckled trout this time of year. We saw mullet and redfish all in the grass beds, and the same places where the ducks are, there's going to be fish.
Wow, terrific place. It's a treasure for Louisiana. We'll be back. SOLA TV. Don't touch that remote.